Okay, so we're moving on to some color theory. And so we're actually going to paint two types of color wheels. We're going to do a basic color wheel, which is what this video is going to be about. And then we are also going to paint a split primary color wheel, the split primary system. We'll do this through watching another video by another person, but I will demo how to set it up for you and then going over what colors are warm and cool and kind of explain why some colors are kind of dull and others are very vivid. Like what's the difference between very brownish violet and a very brilliant violet, and so on. So that will be later. So we're going to focus first on this color wheel. We're going to go ahead and in our sketchbook, we're going to divide the paper in half. So we're going to be using one section of it, so the top half of it is going to be for our general normal color wheel. And so if you want to kind of split this in half with your ruler, make a tick mark at 7.5. And then draw yourself a line. You probably want to do this really lightly. I'm finding that it's not showing very well if I don't. And so what we're going to do is we're going to draw some circles, some circular shapes. So go ahead and draw yourself, I hope you guys can't see that. Go ahead and draw yourself a circle, right? We're going to try to form it into a triangle. Okay, and then we're going to do kind of our intermediate colors. So I drew that kind of low, but that's okay. Maybe I'll do our secondary colors smaller here. So normally I give you a color wheel and then we kind of make it work. But we're just going to draw it. So if yours is not perfect, you can see mine's not perfect. It's not that big a deal. Okay, I was going to have us just draw it freehand and not draw it out, but I thought that might be a little intimidating. Okay, so we want to draw out, right, a place for our primary colors. So these are going to be our primaries. These are going to be our secondary colors. And then these little ones are going to be our tertiary colors. So feel free to pause it and replay it as you need to. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to use some of the colors that are in our palette. So you might have to grab out your colors from the very first day. Right? So you might have to find this. It's probably at the beginning. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the Cadmium Yellow Deep, right? So we're going to do Cad Yellow as our yellow. We're going to use Alizarin Crimson as our red, and we're going to use Ultramarine as our blue. And those are the only three colors we're going to use for this color wheel. It doesn't mean eventually we won't use some of the greens and the orange and the violets I gave you, but I want you to review for yourself, right? I want you to review for yourself those primary colors. Okay, if you need to take some time, clean up your shapes a little bit, you can. So you can pause that until you're happy. And then I'm going to go ahead and get started. So first things first, you probably have mixed some colors. So this might be a good time to kind of clean out your palette. So you might put some water in these sections. I'm not using the phthalo blue, so I'm just going to use some water on my Sumier brush and then maybe a paper towel to kind of wipe it clean. Okay, another thing you might want to use today is one of the plates I gave you. Since we're going to be mixing all these colors, you might need some more space to mix into. So you might want to grab that out as well. Okay, so all I'm going to do first is paint in my primary colors. So I'm going to start with the lightest of them, right? So I'm going to go in here with the with the cadmium yellow. Kind of looks a little orangish, and that's okay. That's going to be our yellow. Brush away the eraser. And I want you to go in and kind of put in a flat wash. See if you can go in here and see if you can stay in the lines, right? Little working on edges, okay? If you find that you've got water blossoms or you've got puddles of color, right? You might want to dry the brush off and then kind of go back over it and kind of sop up some of that extra water, right? So kind of mop up the extra water. And you want your color to be still kind of transparent. You don't want it to be thick and chalky. Watercolor is supposed to be watery, okay? Go into your palette or into your water, clean your paintbrush really, really well, right? Dry it just to check and make sure. And then now let's go ahead and go into our next color. Now, I am a righty, so I think I'm going to go with the blue next so that I don't accidentally put my hand in the wet red. So let's go ahead and find the ultramarine blue, right? Scrub at it so that you get plenty of color. Make sure that you have the ultramarine blue, so double check it, right? And then same thing. If you're finding that it's hard to control the Sumier brush, maybe you want to move to your number, I think this is the number 4 round, yeah. And then do the same thing. Go back and forth and fill it in, right? You might find, oh, it didn't even hold enough water for me to finish it, so now maybe I have to go back in. And then color that in. And, you know, I just went out of the lines a little bit. So while it's still wet, what I can do is take some paper towel, kind of lift it up, and it kind of cleaned it up some. Right? If I want to make it even, I can brush clean water over the whole thing. I can clean my edges up. I can pick up any extra that I have. Sometimes you can even take a little bit of water, just plain water, on the edge, but not too much because you don't want it to bleed. And then you can kind of lift up too, and that sometimes cleans it up. Okay. So I'm just going to, I like my Sumier brush. I realize it might be difficult for some of you guys though, so feel free to use whichever brush works best, as long as it's not too small. Okay. So then we're going to move on to the Alizarin Crimson. So once again, let's make sure to wash our brush out really well because we don't want it to turn purple. Okay. I have Alizarin Crimson in this big area already, but I want to make sure it's clean. So I'm going to go ahead and grab it from the dish and paint that in. So once again, try to stay in the lines. Try to see if you can make it even, like a back and forth motion. Like I said before, I don't even care that's like an irregular shape because that just gives me practice painting in a regular shape, right? So I can pick up some of this puddle. Sometimes it picks up too much. Okay. So at this time, you might want to let it dry a little bit, or you could be really careful. Now, and keep moving on. Now you could, right? You could literally paint some yellow down and put some blue on top, and it's gonna make green, right? However, I think that's hard to do. So what I want you to do is to make green, right? And I know this is the part where people are gonna wanna cheat, but I can tell if you make it versus if you use the colors in your palettes, because they're not gonna be the same. So what you wanna do is take some of the yellow, right, and put it in a well, right? And then you're gonna take, clean your brush, some blue. Now you're gonna find that you're not gonna need as much blue as you need yellow, right? So then you're gonna mix it together and try to make a greenish color. Now sometimes you might wanna test the color out and go, oh, that needs more blue, right? Because it's maybe the yellow is too strong. It looks kind of like a yellow green, or maybe you added too much blue and it looks like a blue green. Okay, this one is turning out to be kind of like a dingy green. And I think the reason for that is that I'm using a warm yellow instead of a cool yellow. So the cadmium yellow is such a kind of like an orangey yellow that some of the red from that orange is dulling down the color. That's like one of those ways I can see if we use the wrong color, right? So there's the green. Okay, while that's drying a little bit, I'll show you what it would look like if I made it with the lemon yellow and that blue. Let's get some more yellow. That went really, right? So you can see here how that's a much prettier green. Or maybe you can't. See if you guys can see it a little bit better close up. Okay, on my screen it looks a little gray, but in real life it looks more green. Okay, clean your brush out really, really well, and let's go ahead and try to make the orange. So this time I'm going to use maybe my palette here, right? And I'm going to put down some yellow. And I'm going to add a little bit of the red to make it orange. I'm going to stir it up. Now that looks awfully red to me, so that probably means I need some more yellow. Right? And I stir that and then paint that into the orange section. Now, if I would have used one of the other reds, we'd get an entirely different orange color. Okay, if yours is a little bit darker than mine, that's okay, but you want to make sure that it doesn't look thick and chalky. You want to make sure you're using plenty of water. Okay, the last one is going to be your violet. And if you're using the plate, don't go anywhere near the orange because we're going to want to probably keep that to do the intermediate. So I'm going to go kind of off to the side and add my blue. And I'll add my red, stir it up. Okay, so once again, I'm kind of looking at it, and you can always make a little mark and look. To me, it looks a little bit too red, so maybe I want to go back in and add some more blue. My brush is really sopping up this color, so it doesn't look like I'm making very much here. There we go. So now I'll paint the violet in. Okay, so now I need to start making the tertiary colors. So what you're gonna do with these is you're gonna mix your yellow and orange together to make yellow orange. Your orange together with your red to make red orange. Okay, so you might label these things for yourself too, if that helps. Right, so this is gonna be yellow orange, red orange, red violet, blue violet, blue green, and yellow green. And you'll notice that we always put the primary color first because there's more yellow in it than there is red for the yellow orange. Okay, so if this is still wet, you could take a puddle from the yellow and a puddle from the orange and mix them together, but yours probably isn't still wet. So you can just go in and make it. So what I'm gonna do is take some yellow off to the side here. I'm gonna add a little bit of the orange to it. So I didn't mix all of the orange into this. Just gonna grab a little bit of it and paint in, right, the yellow orange. Now, it needs to be different from the yellow and the orange. If it looks too much like the orange, add more yellow, right? If it looks like it's red orange, then you didn't put enough yellow at all, right? So make sure that the color looks significant. One of the nice things about this is if you don't like the color while it's still wet, you could always go back in and add a little bit more of another color to it and fix it. So I just put a little bit more orange on this yellow orange so that it looks more orange than yellow. Because right here, at first, I really felt like it looked like it was still yellow. Okay, so you're going to keep repeating this process. So I'm going to add some more red to my normal orange. So you can see it almost looks like a dull red right now, but it definitely has some orange in it. Okay, make sure that you're constantly cleaning your brush. Right, now I'm going to do my red violet. Now I probably should have switched sides because now I have to be extra careful that I don't smear this, but I think I can manage. I can always move it too if I need to, right? So your red violet should look different than your red, right? And it should not look too similar to your violet. Something cool is kind of happening, and I don't know if it's happening to yours, but in the violet, I can actually see the red and the blue kind of separating for some reason. And so I can actually see both colors at once, which is kind of cool looking. I don't know if you can see it there. Yeah, you sort of see it in the monitor, right? That's okay, because of course we have a violet that we can use. But it still looks like, especially from a distance, it looks violet. So then now I need to do the more blue, right? So this is going to be kind of a periwinkle sort of color. This looks kind of like a purple, doesn't it? Purple is different than violet. Right? And then we'll move on to our blue-green. So where did I make my green? I made my green there. So for me, I'm gonna have to grab some more blue and stir it into it. So it's gonna look kind of turquoise. Now I feel like that color looks really watery. So I might need to go back in and add some more of both colors to this. Now, I did too much yellow. Okay, so I'm double checking, wanting to make sure it doesn't look like my green. So it should have a little bit more of a bluish tinge to it. It should look kind of turquoisey. Feel free to move to a smaller brush if you need to, since this is a smaller space. All right, then last one, I'm gonna add some more yellow to that green. Let's steal from that. To have my last tertiary or intermediate color. Okay, so there you go, your simple color wheel, just using your 3 primary colors. Now you can have a multitude of different color wheels based on using the different yellows and the different reds and the different blues. But this is probably the one that's like truest to the colors that we normally think of as violet and green and orange. Maybe the exception was maybe I should have used the lemon yellow instead of the cadmium yellow to make a better green, but we will practice that when we do the split primary system.